Rising. We're on take 2 because some dumb bitch forgot to switch on her microphone.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Hey there guys, my name's Megan if you're new here, and if not, welcome back for a spooky Halloween episode of Killer Weekend, where each week we'll discuss a true crime case and you guys can feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments box below. If you like all things true crime, supernatural, UFO, conspiracy theory, and all that good stuff in between, then please hit that subscribe button. I'll be here for you each week with our true crime killer weekends, and on and off every couple of Wednesdays with our Weirdo Wednesdays, where we'll discuss something spooky I've heard. Listen, I know I might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it helps me sleep at night knowing that nothing I do will ever be as embarrassing as Hilary Swank's performance in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Get out of my facial.
I will leave a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It does involve details of violent crime. If that's a trigger point for you, then please feel free to turn away now. So how's everyone doing? Any special plans for this weekend? Have any of you got a cool costume that you're wearing? If so, I want to see it. So please feel free to send it over on Instagram, Twitter, carrier pigeon will do. In honour of All Hallows Eve, we'll be diving into some mysterious cases, mini mysteries if you will, that all took place around the creepiest time of the year. Our first tale of woe is one that has stained the reputation of Erie County for over 4 decades and serves as a cautionary tale to young men walking alone after dark. Tonight, everyone, we will be discussing the haunting murder of James Adamsky, Halloween of Horrors. To look at the area where James grew up, you would think it'd be the perfect place to raise a family. The village of Depew in the very aptly named Erie County is a fairly decent sized town with around 16,000 residents. Nestled along the Canadian border, the town has so much to offer, from its stunning wildlife to its close-knit suburban neighbourhoods. In the summer, kids would ride their bikes over to Frosty's ice cream parlour on George Urban Boulevard, and as the autumn leaves fell, mums and dads would help their little ones pick out which character they were going to be for Halloween. I read in one article the village of Depew could be described as wholesome, and it was even listed in the top 10 places to live in the US. But on the night of October 30th, 1982, a fresh crack would appear in Depew's shiny veneer, and it would become pretty obvious pretty quickly that some residents would rather sweep that night under the rug than risk their town's wholesome reputation. James Bernard Adamsky was born in Cheektowaga on the 18th of July 1964 to his loving parents Rosemarie and Bernard. According to those who knew and loved him, James was like a tornado going through that house, full of energy and constantly making his family laugh with his wacky one-liners. He grew up being very close to his older siblings Susan and Larry, and was worshipped by his little brother Andy. Andy thought his big brother was hilarious and wanted to be just like him when he grew up. Whilst attending Depew High School, James was known as a real joker, the class clown. He loved art class and his friends said he was one of the funniest guys you would ever meet. An ex-girlfriend of his said he was an incredible singer, and when he belted out Queen's We Will Rock You in music class, everyone had goosebumps. In his senior year, James also had a part-time job working for the Ponderosa Pancake House. And not to, sidetrack too much, but I have one of the most disgusting stories about a Ponderosa in Florida. I'll set the scene for you, okay? It's hot as balls outside, as Florida often is, and I walk in with my family to Ponderosa. I go to the bathroom because I need a little tinkle, but oh no, someone has smeared feces all over the walls. Me, traumatized and not looking forward to my Nutella pancakes as much as I once was, headed out and told a member of staff. Do you know what she said to me? Just another Thursday. Yes. But anywho, back in 1982, James was rocking that disco vibe haircut and his goofy grin could put a smile on anyone's face. I read in an article that he loved bowling with his friends. He was just a regular kid with his whole life ahead of him. But no one could have guessed how short that life would be. That Halloween weekend was set to be jam-packed full of spooky fun for James and his pals. He had 2 parties to go to, one at his friend Karen's house and another costume party at a local bar named 5 and 23 on Transit Road, only a 10-minute drive from his family home at 12 View Court. It's been heavily reported that night James chose to dress up as Richard Gere's character in American Gigolo. But his friends have said online that that's completely inaccurate. In fact, the inspiration behind James's costume that evening was none other than heavy metal frontman Alice Cooper. See, I told you it would all make sense. The costume, not the murder. That night, the 5 and 23 bar was offering bottomless drinks for anyone willing to pay the $12 entry fee. At that time in the US, the legal drinking age was 18. So James headed to the local night spot along with most of Depew High's senior class. As always, he was on top form, dancing the night away. But as the booze kept flowing, James's humour became a little too much for some people. According to eyewitnesses that night, a couple of guys started hassling James and his friends, and in his typical fashion, he could not resist an opportunity to screw with them. One of the guys apparently got right up in James's face. They were toe to toe, and in that moment, James looked him in the eye, leaned in, and gave him a big kiss. According to other patrons, because of this, the fight then got physical until some people were removed from the bar. James and his classmates started pouring out of the pub at around closing time, and being the gentleman that he was, he offered to walk a female friend home. After they parted ways, he started on the 2-mile walk back to his house. He was wearing a Halloween costume and the roads were quiet, so he would have stood out. But I could only find one confirmed sighting after he left his female companion. At 3:20 a.m, a police officer stopped by the roadside to talk to him, but he was only buzzed, he wasn't wasted, so he left him to continue his journey back to his parents' house. Rosemary Adamski stayed up really late that night waiting on James walking through the front door. But she would later on say that a little voice in her mind told her he never would. When his bed was still empty by sunrise, she knew her worries were justified and she called local police. At first, there appeared to be an air of reluctance around James's case, and of course, police believed that a young 18-year-old red-blooded male was probably just shacking up with a girl for the weekend. When James was missing, his family desperately tried to get his story in the local press, hoping that if someone saw his face, it might jog their memory of what had happened that night. But this would be the first roadblock the Adamskis would face on their road to justice, because the editor said that he would happily put James's face in the paper for a price. Yes, despite their son being the only boy missing in a fairly small town, they were told they would have to pay $100 if they wanted him to be featured on a tiny clipping on the back page. The months passed, and as the missing posters became torn and weather-beaten, the name James Adamski was heard less and less around Depew. Christmas Day 1982, and one of the worst days of Rosemary and Bernard's lives. They had to plaster on a smile for their other children, but it was very apparent there was one special person missing. They were trapped in this impossible state of limbo. But they wouldn't be for much longer, as on the 26th of December, a group of hunters discovered human remains in a shallow grave only 5 miles from where James was last seen. The local police and fire department were called to the scene on Ransom Road, where a young man's body could be seen in a shallow, hand-dug grave covered by leaves and branches. It didn't take investigators very long to ID the corpse as James's, as he was still partially dressed in his Halloween costume, wearing his scarf, necklace and rings. His body was badly beaten, and it was determined that he had died from blunt force trauma after being hit with a blunt heavy object, such as a 2x4 or a baseball bat. The extensive damage to James's skull, in particular his forehead area, would suggest he was killed in a fit of rage. No physical trace was found of his attacker near the body, so investigators wondered if the person had possibly worn gloves. As the dump site was only 7 miles away from the Adamsky family home, it was a strong probability that this person could have been a resident of Depew, maybe even someone he pissed off that night at the Halloween party. Yes, James had an amazing sense of humour. However, his quick wit could get him into trouble sometimes. But would a small disagreement at a party really prompt someone to follow a stranger home and bludgeon them in cold blood? The young woman who James had walked home that night was quickly interviewed and ruled out as a suspect. This kind of crime was so rare in the 1980s. It was often women who were warned about the dangers of walking home after dark, but now the men of Depew truly had something to be afraid of. The Adamskis' lives were turned upside down the night that James never returned, and his murder is as much a mystery today as it was 40 years ago. Was he picked up by a perfect stranger? Was someone stalking him that night? We just don't know. And sadly, in the year 2000 and 2005, Rosemary and Bernard would pass away without ever knowing who killed their son and why. His siblings have had to come to the harsh realization that the person who took his life may now have died themselves. The family have pushed hard for so many years, but as we approach the 40th anniversary of James's death, it would appear that the chances of a conviction are very slim. Law enforcement believe that this person would have been a local back in 1982, so if they are still alive, they could still be walking the streets of Depew this very Halloween. Who knows, maybe they've even gone on to have their own families, all the while hiding this horrific secret from their past. James was described as just a good boy, and whether he was a little bit cheeky or not, he didn't deserve to die this way. The town of Depew has definitely changed since 1982, and the incident that made headlines has long been forgotten by those who live there now. But for those who loved James Adamsky, the trauma of that night cannot be erased, and until his attacker is convicted, they will be forced to relive the Halloween of horrors. If you know anything regarding James Adamski's case, please get in touch. I will leave the number for Crime Stoppers on the screen and also in the description box below. I hope you guys enjoyed our special episode. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. For me, it really helps this wee channel of mine. If you want to know what this spooky bitch gets up to in her free time, then please feel free to follow me. Not home, because we've established that that's a boundary we're not willing to cross. On Instagram, at Megan True Crime. I also have a TikTok page at megan.truecrime. And for all my ladies and gents who are born in the Ice Age like me, we have Twitter, okay? At Megan True Crime. If you're watching for the first time and you're still wondering, is she a drag queen? No, I'm a lady.
I'm a lady and my name is Emily Howard.
Please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. Gremlins, I cannot believe it. We are almost at 20,000 subscribers. How exciting. Do you guys remember when, funny story, I had the worst microphone in the world and I only had my mum and my sister watching?
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
I love you all so much. You're seriously my little internet best friends and I can't wait to meet you one day. So please remember to lock your doors, don't talk to strangers, and don't try and dye your hair blonde from black because it'll fall out.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty.
See ya!